today's Saturday, it's the 4th of June 2022, and we're out in Portixol, and we're going to have a little walk on this side of Palma today. We've just been in search of a car boot sale because it was not there. So the car boot sale that we would normally go to on a Saturday used to be in Santa Ponta in the Son Bordigas industrial estate. But when we went there last week, there was no sign of it. So I looked it up, and the Calvia website said no car boot sale there, no market. And I received a comment from someone who'd seen the video, and they said that the land where the car boot sale was being held is now going to be developed. So the car boots people have been told to move off to Consell, spelt Consell. We went there a couple of weeks ago. That's a really big market, and there's lots of car boot people there, but it's on a Sunday, it's not on a Saturday. There used to be another one in Palma, which I need to investigate, but that was near to Son Fustaret, which is where they have all the big concerts, and that hasn't been held there for some time. So I was looking on the internet, and I found mention of it being moved to another industrial estate. I've just been there, we've just been there, and there's no sign of it. So you'll have to wait a little bit on that one, and when we know a bit more, I'll mention in one of the videos. So we've started our walk. No, we haven't. We've come to a cafe. We're going to start the walk after the coffee. So cheers everyone, and just had a nice coffee, and now we're going to set off on a little walk. We're actually at the Portixol end, so just in front of us the Portixol Hotel, and just the other side of there's the Portixol Marina. But we're not going to go that way, we're going to go this way, which is by the sea and along the promenade. There's 2 or 3 little cafe bars here where you can stop off for a drink, so that's what we did before we started. It's only 10:30 in the morning. We got out early because we wanted to go to this car boot sale, and they're always better if you go early, but no car boot sale, so straight out for a walk along the promenade here. It's also very popular with cyclists, as you might be able to see here. There's a cycle path that runs parallel to the promenade, well, it actually runs along the promenade. Do be careful if you're walking to keep off the cycle path. And there's, this is Portixol. So someone wrote to me, said they normally go to different parts of the island, and they're actually going to rent a house in Portixol. So I don't know if it's one of these along here, but you're right on the beach if it is. And it would be a really great spot. Just across the road, it's a sort of part sandy, part pebbly beach here. People are already on the beach, and people have already been in the sea. We can see people out there swimming along. And all along here you've got a great choice of different restaurants as well, and behind me as well. So where the port is behind, there's lots of restaurants around that area, so you won't find it too difficult to find good places to have something to eat or drink. And there's this wonderful promenade which is pretty flat all the way along, and you can walk for as far as you want to walk. It can be a short walk, or it can be an extremely long walk, because you could actually walk from here all the way to Arenal pretty much. But if you yeah, if you walk one way, you've got to then walk the other way. So we're going to walk for a little. Yeah, very modern sort of restaurant bar.
It's even got a name on it.
Big glass front. As we walk along, there's various shady places that you can sit and watch the world go by, watch the boats coming in and going out. We've actually got a good view here of the port in Palma, which is coming up, and you can see one of those huge cruise liners in there. So there's some benches here, you can just sit yourself down and have a look. Wasn't expecting the waves, but there are actually some quite big waves here, and on other occasions you might even find surfers out if the waves are getting really big. But yesterday it was very breezy, and the sea looked pretty calm actually, but I've seen a few big waves and you sometimes see surfers here as well. So apologies if we get any bit of a wind noise, sure. So just going past Perry Pleu. I don't know any of the restaurants. The only one we go to sometimes is the Raft restaurant in Calagamba, and we've had some really nice food there. So that's the only one I can recommend from experience. But I can't imagine there's any bad ones along here. But you need to just look for reviews on things like TripAdvisor. Also a good place if you like plane spotting. You won't find many trains, but planes you will. And the planes will, as the summer comes and the tourists arrive in their droves, then you'll be spotting planes every 90 seconds more or less. It's very, very busy. I'm just going to walk up to the sea because you'll be able to hear the waves. Actually, I like watching waves. Must be the oceanographer in me. I'm just going to look both ways and cross the cycle path. There's a crossing here, so I'm doing it properly. And just watch the waves for a minute or two, hitting the rocks down here, maybe splashing us a little, or maybe not. If you like watching birds, then the cormorants are always fascinating because they sort of on the surface of the water and then they just disappear, and you wonder where they've gone, and then a minute or so later they pop up somewhere totally different. They can swim quite long distances underwater.
It's an aeroplane as well.
We've actually got a little bit of a sea smell here because this is where the seaweed is. We're going to carry on, make our way across the cycle path, which is now used a lot by these scooters as well. And make our way along here. There's, in the past couple of years there's been a lot of work going on here with the new port, and just the first impression approaching that, it seems as though that work is not yet finished. Certainly did gather a pace. There's a blue fence in front which is hiding something behind where the work's going on. We're going past another couple of little cafes, people having their morning coffees,
Breakfast.
and then some restaurants which I'm sure are going to be opening up later on. So the old building here, which is in the port, is in the process of being restored. There's obviously still a lot of work going on. I'll put the camera up a little bit over the top so you can see what I can't see because I'm down here. I suppose the good news is that I can't see any heavy machinery, so if you are staying along here somewhere, and maybe you won't be too disturbed by the horrible noise of machinery. Yeah, there is a big generator I can see up there. So this is the port that all the work was being done on when we were coming along, and it looks pretty much finished. This part looks really good. There's one thing missing, not a boat in sight, so I'm guessing all of that will come later on. This is Bar Malinar over there. And this part actually looks pretty much finished. The part that doesn't look finished is the old house. It's all held up by acros, and it would be sad to lose that. Hopefully they're going to do a good restoration job on that.
Park here.
And that's pretty much all new, isn't it? That's,
Yeah.
I think last time we came, I wasn't there. It was maybe under wraps, but now it's open. Children are inside and playing on little slides and what have you.
Pirate ship.
We need a pirate ship, don't we? And what definitely wasn't open before was at the top there, there's a little elevated bit to the promenade, which it's got to be worth a look up there. Some benches by the looks of things that you can sit on. So this area is Molinar. This is gated off, so that is, yeah, that's car parking for the marina, which is sensible. They need a shaded spot to put your car, and so yeah, that's going to be pretty useful for people who are using that marina in the future.
Parasol time.
And the sun's breaking through. It is pretty cloudy today. We had some rain this morning, which just dumped more mud on my car. So the question is, do I go and get it cleaned? Or do I wait for the next rain to come? So I don't know. We'll wait and see. Sorry? Oh, I'm just going to have a look at it. So what I could actually see from down below were the sitting area. Looks as though the kids have found it already. There's graffiti here, empty beer bottles. So that's not so nice. But it is a beautiful view over there to Palma, out to sea, and then along the coast towards the Playa de Palma and onward into Arenal in the distance. Very exposed up here though, so if you were coming, this is not a place to sit in the middle of the day when it's very sunny. There's no shade at all. So potter along.
Another aeroplane there.
As we walk along in this direction, we see all the airplanes taking off. I mentioned on an earlier video that I published this morning about some of the issues that are being caused at the airports in the UK, particularly Dublin though, I've noticed. So it's not just the UK. And here again in Palma. So it all started with queues outside the airport for people to actually check in, and then once they got to Palma, more delays when they had to go through the passport control. There's been lots of comments in the newspaper about it, that somebody needs to sort it out. The government blames it on the airlines not being prepared and the airports not being prepared, and the airlines and the airports have been hitting back today. So Steve Heapy, who's from Jet2, well, he blames it on two things, and one of them I think might be a Ratner moment. He's actually blamed the lazy British tourists for part of the problem.
Why?
Well, he says there's some lazy British tourists who are using things like the assistance, and it's not necessary. They can actually walk from the aeroplane. Nice to see some of our neighbours who are from the other side of Palma, but they're over here like us, enjoying the promenade. So Steve Heapy's blaming the British tourists to a certain extent, causing some of the problems, but then he also mentioned Brexit as well. And Michael O'Leary, the Ryanair chief executive, put his 2 pence or 2 cents worth, or whatever it is Michael O'Leary puts in, and he blames it totally on Brexit. And his argument is that Ryanair and all the other airlines and the airports need to employ staff, and during COVID those staff were largely, or before COVID, were largely Europeans, and then during COVID they weren't allowed to work, there were no flights going, so they were put on furlough, or some of them simply returned. In fact, a lot of them would have returned to their native land, so other European countries. And then Brexit happened and was enforced, and they couldn't come back, so they can't come back to work. You can't, so a European can't come back to the UK to work as a baggage handler or as a check-in assistant, or all of those things that are needed at the airports. Which I suppose you might say, well, that's great for the unemployed of Britain, but the unemployed of Britain can't fill those posts because they're not trained to do it, and some of them simply don't want to do it. So the airlines are really struggling to find staff and train staff in order to do the work. I read, the last thing I read this morning on that one was that baggage handlers are insisting upon more money, because now they're in short supply. So baggage handler is a short supply job, and they want to get more than the wage that they're actually getting. And it becomes supply and demand. In the end, that's what it happens. It becomes supply and demand. Michael O'Leary said something similar about Brexit. He didn't blame the British tourists. He blamed Brexit totally. He says the whole reason for this is because Britain left the European Union, and the employees that they need were largely from the European Union. If you think back to pre-pandemic days, the staff on the aeroplane, the staff at the airport, and the check-in, the staff who were at the cafes inside the airport, the staff who were doing the baggage, but you probably wouldn't know this, that they are not British, many of them. A big proportion of these people were Europeans. And if they've all gone, somebody's got to fill their shoes, and that's what the big problem is. On the other side, when you arrive in Palma, pre-Brexit, you just showed your passport and went through. And there are now dozens of electronic terminals for you to just show your passport or scan your passport, and away you go. It's really quick and really simple. It's worked really well. Although somebody did tell me that last week they weren't actually switched on and they weren't using them, so it all had to be done manually. I don't know whether that's a temporary glitch or something else. But there was only that one passport control. Now there's 2 passport controls, so you have to have your passport scanned or looked at by an immigration officer, but then it has to be stamped by a local police officer. And in Palma, at least the last time we were there were 2 on duty, and a plane load arrives in, you've got 200-300 people, and each one has to have their passport open, passport looked at, passport stamped, and it takes a few seconds for that to happen. But when you multiply that by 200 or 300 for a plane, then you're talking about a considerable time, and we're talking about lots and lots of planes coming in, so it's thousands. And as we get towards the summer, it's going to be millions of people who are going to have their passports stamped. So the queues are not going to get any less unless they employ more staff, and the hoteliers over here are calling on the government to put more staff in the airport so that they can speed the transition through the airport. I've spoken to some people who said that they had no particular issues at all, and others we've seen in the newspapers have said that there were huge long queues. If you have experienced either way, if you've experienced a long queue or no queue, let us know. Put in the comments down below. Let us know what's going on at the airport, both sides, in the UK, in here. If you've got videos, then you can send those to us. We are Steve and Anita in Mallorca at gmail.com. I'll try and remember to put that down in the comments section on the YouTube channel.
Well, I'm going back on Wednesday.
So we'll get some first-hand experience then.
I'll tell you about my experience when I get back.
She has a ridiculously early flight out. So I'm going to be at the airport at about 4 o'clock in the morning to drop Anita off. And then I'm going to come home, try and get a little bit of sleep because I've got to go to work.
You can do it, darling.
So, you have a lovely time, darling.
It's nice.
Yeah, just looking at the building across the road there, which has had the stonework. I don't know whether it's been redone, but it looks really quite good. There's a little bit of a sandy beach here as well, and the waves are crashing against the beach, and a little bit more wavy here, but the sea still looks beautifully clean. Far across the road, the Chorri. Be interesting to see what it's like when Anita comes back. What I noticed on the floor of the airport, at least in the newspaper, it was showing that on the floor there are now indicators of which way you should go. So if you're from the UK, you follow the British sign. If you're from other places, then you can follow the Irish sign or the EU sign. And the difference being, if you follow the British sign, then you're going to have your passport checked twice. And if you go through the other one, then you may get your passport checked or not at all, just have a quick glance at it. The other thing that hasn't yet reared its ugly head is customs. Because if you're coming through from the UK, then you have to, legally you have to go through customs. At the moment you just go through and you say, I've got nothing to declare. At some point I think that might start to be enforced. At the moment, not really. And something else that's going to hit the British tourists, travellers, is that from later on this year, possibly next year, it's not been clearly defined in terms of the date, but you're going to need a visa waiver. So it's not actually a visa, it's a waiver that you don't need the visa. It's because you're from the British are from a third country now, so it's just like coming from America, for example. And if you want to come to Mallorca, then third countries would normally have to have a visa, particularly if you want to be here for any length of time. And the British and the Europeans have agreed that the people from the UK can actually come for 90 days in any 6 months period. But to check up on all of that, there's going to be a visa, and you're going to have to pay for a visa. It's not actual visa, it's a certificate that says you don't need a visa. So this is going to come into force later on this year. Everyone will have to have one if you're from the UK with a UK passport, and it's going to cost you, I think, about €7. So it's not a lot of money. So I suppose if you're a family of 4, you've got to multiply that by 4, €28, and it lasts for 3 years. So that should be okay. And they've said it should all be done very simply online, and for 95% of the people it should be very, very simple. You just go through various checks, your name, your date of birth, passport details, and so long as you meet all the right criteria, which 95% of people will do, then your visa will be granted, and it'll just be a QR code on your phone which you can be able to show when you come into the country.
Did you still have to show your passport, your vaccination thing?
At the moment, yeah. At the moment, when you come in, you'll have to show the fact that you've got full vaccination, which means you've had your suitable jabs, and if necessary, you've had the booster. So that booster is required if your normal jabs were more than 270 days ago. So as long as all that's done, you're fine, you can come in. If you don't fall into that category, then the only other ways you can come are with a recent COVID recovery certificate. That means you've recovered from COVID within the last 6 months. And you can also, if you've not had the jabs and you've not got the full recovery, then tourists from the UK can come with a PCR test or a lateral flow test. But it must be done within the 2 or 3 days. 2 days in the case of the lateral flow, 3 days in the case of the PCR. You must have had those done within that time period before you actually travel.
Our friend had just been on a cruise and she had to have a test the day before she went. They sent it when she went on the boat.
Yeah, cruises still sort of places where if someone gets it on the cruise, then it can spread like wildfire. They're very confined places. So obviously they want to make sure that everybody who goes on the boat in the first place is free from COVID. And COVID itself hasn't disappeared from the island. We're still getting something like 200 or so cases a day, where at one point we were down to less than 50. So there's still lots of people getting it, but we now sort of live with it now. So nobody seems to be too worried about it. In most places you don't need a mask. In fact, you don't need any precautions whatsoever, though you're still recommended to stay 1.5 meters away from people, and you're still recommended to wear a mask if that's your inclination. And you do find when you're walking through Palma and other places too that a lot of people still do wear masks here as they're walking around the streets.
You have to wear one on an aeroplane.
Sorry?
You have to wear one on the aeroplane.
Right, so where do you have to wear a mask? On an aeroplane. So
Yes,
flights in and out of Spain, you're required to wear a face mask. Public transport, so the one thing is just public transport. If you're on public transport, you need to wear a face mask. So if you get on a bus or a train or an aeroplane, then you need to wear a face mask. The other places that you may enter, you come over here, you might want to go to the pharmacy to pick up something. If you go into a pharmacy, you need to wear a face mask. And if you go to any medical sort of place, a doctor's, a clinic, all of those, residencia for the elderly, then you need to wear a face mask. So lots of places where you do require a face mask, but most places not. And it's made life a lot easier. So bars and restaurants, you no longer need to wear them. Smoking is something that people ask about. I'm very anti-smoking. I'll say that right from the off.
Just wear a face mask if you smoke.
Exactly. Well, there's actually a call at the moment to ban smoking in all public places. I'm all for that. So first place is the beach, and you might find, not in Mallorca I don't think, but you might find in some parts of Spain that it's already been brought about by a local law, so you need to check. But smoking on beaches is one place they've actually called for a ban on smoking. Been in the papers just this last week or two. But to spread that more generally, one thing said where there were children, so children pretty much everywhere, so outdoor spaces. So we'll see how that one makes a move. At the moment, you can't and haven't been allowed to smoke inside bars and restaurants for a long time. It's made them much cleaner, much more pleasant places to visit. I can remember in the days that they allowed smoking, go into a bar and I'd come out and I'd have a headache, and I'm sure it was down to the smoke that I was breathing in. So I've become over the years very much anti-smoking. I actually used to teach it at school, but now so few people smoke, really, I suppose. I don't do it anymore. If you are in a bar and on a terrace, you're not allowed to smoke. So the rule is that you have to go for a walk outside and stand stationary. You can't wander around, and that's where you can smoke your cigarettes. It's a bit of exercise. Pick up your rocks. A bit too heavy for me. It's not good for my knees. Yeah, so smoking, even the electronic cigarettes, the issues are the same. So it's frowned upon, and that comes from a country, Spain, where smoking is still extremely popular amongst the general population. It is going slowly, but and the younger people, I think, are leading the fight against that, because the younger people are not smoking as much as they used to. Price of cigarettes is increasing here, but I think it's anything like the price you might have in the UK, where they're taxed and taxed and taxed. I think that's great. I know some of you won't agree with me on all of this, but it's my personal opinion. So sometimes when we come to this area, we don't park in Portixol, we'll actually park in one of the side streets, and one of those that we do park is down to the left here. And you may have noticed there's quite a few camper vans. This is it's camper van territory. There is almost nowhere on the island where you can actually go and park one of these things. Camper van, it is, and sleep in it legally. Almost nowhere.
Weren't they trying to do something about it?
Yeah, so about 2 weeks ago, a whole lot of these camper van owners decided to have a drive through Palma in protest and say, why can't we have this place? And it came to a head because someone had opened an unofficial one in the middle of the island and provided facilities for these people so that they could empty their toilets and they could get fresh water and all of those sorts of things that you need. And it got closed down. So they decided to protest and see if the government will actually change the legislation in order to allow this sort of tourism to survive legally. At the moment, all of the camper vans that have been slept in the street are doing so illegally. There is no, you're not allowed to do that. Just been past an adult park. So this one on the left here is not for children. It's got things for adults. So it's got it's an outdoor gym, and you've got weights to lift, you've got bicycles to ride, all sorts of things there. And it's right next to the children's park as well. We've got on the beach here, we've got the lifeguard on duty, green flag, which means it's safe to swim. and the brollies and the beds are out.
You don't need mental brothers, because on the household you can pay from there now.
Isn't that a safe?
Isn't it?
So I just went to have a look. The boxes underneath the parasols are safes, so you can set the password and number. It's just a number, so you have to remember the number. If you get the number, then you're in trouble. Actually, there's a key to.
Does it say you have to pay there?
No, but you know, you obviously got to pay for the bed, haven't you? So I can't see a sign which says how much the beds are. Keep an eye out and have a look.
So where were you heading for Arenal?
Well, we're heading in that direction, but we're not going to be walking as far as Arenal, my dear. In fact, we might not go much further than the headland. Just around the headland, shall we?
Yeah.
The waves are really quite nice. I think sort of thing I would have enjoyed as a child. In the water and crashing into those waves. They're not huge waves, so I think they're pretty safe for the children. Good fun. So yes, what we've got to remember about our little walk along here is that we've got to walk back, so mustn't overdo it. Coming in now, so actually on the headland that we're going to go to, it's a place quite often stop and just sit down for a few minutes to watch the aeroplanes coming in, bringing another plane load of passengers, their holidays, and that one is a TUI plane coming in. We've actually got a TUI holiday booked for next year.
You have to Ibiza.
Never actually been on a TUI holiday before in our lives, so this will be a first one, but it's not actually until
August.
No, it's not. It's end of June next year. It's the end of June 2023. We're going to Ibiza.
To Lottie's wedding.
How exciting is that? I haven't quite decided yet how we're getting to Ibiza. Flying is pretty quick, takes about 20 minutes or so, and we get a 75% discount because we're residents of the island, so it's reasonably cheap as well, although it's a very expensive bit of flight path to go along. Or we could get the boat, which is a bit slower but quite pleasant if the weather's good. And the boat also has the advantage is that we could actually take the car if we wanted to, and then we could get around the island of Ibiza, which is quite a lot smaller than Mallorca, so we're just going to make that decision. We've got plenty of time to do that. I don't think we get the reduction on the car, so we have to pay full price. I suppose it all depends on how much it costs to hire a car over there if we need to. So one plane comes in and comes another plane as well, so they just come one after another, and sometimes you can actually see the lights all lined up. I can actually see the next one behind now coming out of the clouded area, so they're all lined up one behind the other. Just coming up to a restaurant on the beachside here, which is called The Bungalow. I always find that
cute name, I don't know, it just doesn't seem very Spanish. The bungalow, El Bungalow it is actually. Restaurante. And we've got on the opposite side, we've got another one, Almaro restaurant, and more. Art and cuisine they advertised, not open at the moment. And one of these places is going to be opening a bit later on. The promenade narrows up here, and we just got to watch we don't run into any cyclists. So just to the right we've got El Bungalow. In Palma there's actually it's a €200 fine for walking on a cycle path. So be careful. Lots of little different beaches along here. This one's sort of sandy. They're largely used by the locals. There's another flight coming in, and I can see another one in the distance popping through the clouds. Nice to see the waves smashing against the rocks and splashing up. It's almost getting to the time of year, darling, where we can actually go to the weekends and actually dip our toes in the sea. When we usually do this, it's usually at about 8 o'clock in the morning at the weekends because of work, and we've usually gone home by the time anybody actually arrives on the beaches. So here the path gets so narrow, there isn't a cycle path. So we're sharing the same space as cyclists. It's going to get a bit hairy. So we're going quite quickly. And we'll come around to another little bay. One of the issues of living on an island is, of course, getting off the island, and you've either got two choices: you go by plane or you go by boat. And Mallorca is very well serviced by both. There's lots of planes coming in and going every day, and there are regular services by sea. So you can go from Palma to the mainland, to Valencia or to Barcelona, which would be the one where we would normally go to. But you can also go from the north of the island in Alcudia. So Alcudia has got a port where ferries go to the mainland and to Menorca as well. So if you want to go to Menorca, you can go from there. You actually get to France as well. And that's an interesting one because the ferry from Alcudia to France was actually much cheaper. I don't know what the current prices are, but it was much cheaper than going to the mainland of Spain, which, depending on where you want to end up, could be an interesting option. Restaurant El Peñón in there. delivering to the restaurant down there. And there's a typical boat. I hope you can see that over there. A yacht. It's like two masts and one joining the two. You can put a sunshade over that. They'll use that to go fishing or for day trips. And we watch the aeroplanes coming in as well. So Anita's just reporting that we've done 5,400, well she's done 5,400 steps. I'm not sure how many I've done, similar amount. And we've got a lunch appointment today, so we're not going to go all the way along this promenade which goes on and on and on. It's a lovely walk. Sun's creeping through, so it could actually start to get quite warm along here. So good time to head back and prepare for lunch. And we look forward then to seeing you in our next video. So bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye bye.